So I don't know about you guys, but I personally have a hobby that I'm extremely passionate about, and that is creating face charts with makeup. This is a little bit what it looks like. It's more of an artistic hobby, and it kind of helps me relax when I'm stressed with school and stuff. And I like that it also incorporates with my job, so it makes my job a little less stressful as a makeup artist. I want to walk you through the benefits of having a hobby. Not only have I researched this well enough, but I have also experienced the benefits that come from having a hobby. There are hundreds of hobbies out there, and you guys probably partake in them, but you might not actually realize what they can do for you. Today I want to highlight for you 3 advantages that come from having a hobby. Hobbies can help relieve stress, offer new opportunities to enhance your social life, and also provides a lot of health benefits. First, I will begin by explaining how hobbies can be stress relieving. Studies show that hobbies can help relieve stress by keeping us involved in something that we most likely would enjoy doing. Having a hobby that we appreciate makes us happier and improves our lives. According to Elizabeth Scott on the importance of hobbies for stress relief, she said that hobbies are often thought of as activities for people who lead quiet, relaxed lives. However, people with full, busy, even stressful lives may need hobbies more than the average person and benefit greatly from having hobbies in their lives, which I totally agree with. According to Skilled at Life, an anonymous individual said that they've had many hobbies throughout their life, but so far they've only had 5 that they're extremely passionate about. And they also mentioned a positive change of life, and that it filled them with lots of joy. We're also focused on getting the job done, that we forget to kind of relax and free our minds, and we kind of forget how to even have a hobby or maintain one. So the same individual mentioned previously said that the best way to grow a new hobby is to maybe try something new. And Marlene Comer mentioned in the article, Finding a Hobby as an Adult, that maybe we want to think back to when we were children if we want to find a hobby, because as children, we basically only did things if we liked doing them, and if we didn't like something, we wouldn't do it. So we might have the same core concepts, core interests, I remember. So for example, if you liked playing tag as a kid, maybe you might like going to the gym or running as a hobby. And if you like drawing, then maybe you would like more of an artistic hobby. With that being said, hobbies may even play an important role in our social life. Many hobbies offer new opportunities to enhance our social life. A lot of hobbies we choose to do on our own, but maybe we can try in choosing hobbies to do with other people or to meet new people. It's important to stay social because according to Learning Mind, a lack of adequate social context can leave some people feeling depressed and anxious, and this results in increased stress and less an ideal sense of well-being, which none of us want. So I found some examples of different types of hobbies on Reddit. Some of them, like these, you would have to do in a group, like dancing, maybe taking some cooking classes, volunteer work, and soccer team, where you kind of have to work with other people to get a certain task done. Or things you can do on your own, maybe going to a festival, DJing, karaoke, or photography, where it's less of a setup and you kind of have to push yourself to do it on your own. Creating bonds over hobbies with others also helps us stay happy and social. Skilled at Life said, a hobby is something that you can frequently enjoy with other people, whether you join a club, play in a league, or just gift others with the fruits of your labor. A hobby is a great way to meet and get closer to people who have the same interests as you. And I couldn't agree more. A personal example for me is when I joined the Polynesian Club my freshman year of high school. It kind of forced me to meet new people because I went in as a group with my friends, but they all kind of dipped. And so I was kind of left by myself, and I think it's important to meet new people in high school because you're going to be there for 4 years with the same people. So it was a great experience for me. In addition, being able to enjoy leisure activities could be beneficial to the human health. When people think of hobby, they don't really notice the fact that it plays a huge role in your mental health, but also in your physical health. Hobbies that include activities like hiking and running are more beneficial to your physical health. Molly from the Fine Fit blog said that sports help with flexibility, toning muscles, and maintaining a healthy heart and weight. So if you like more of these activities, you're probably more towards the physical advantages. And I think it's also pretty cool that she mentioned that gardening is also a really cool way to get your physical health with hobbies. She mentioned that you're growing fruits and veggies, which is good because you would later on have to eat them, and they're healthy for you. You get a light exercise, hand arm strength, and absorption from vitamin D from the sun. Hobbies such as drawing and reading helps us maintain our mental health. Paul Martin from the Daily Meditation said that if you work in logical order-based role, find a hobby that's creative. So you basically want to find a hobby that is opposite of what you would normally do in your everyday life. According to Diana Villabrook from Care 2, mental health professionals and researchers are increasingly recommending alternative therapies in conjunction with therapy and medication as treatment for depression and anxiety. So typically when we get diagnosed with anxiety and depression, we're kind of led straight into medication and maybe some therapy. But now what they're suggesting is to maybe include more of these activities. As you can see, there are many advantages and benefits that come from having a hobby. Most of us are busy with obligations, school, and work, and not only have I benefited from hobbies, but as you can see, the people I mentioned have also benefited from them. So this means that most of us would actually benefit from hobbies, whether it's reduction of stress, enhancing social life, or improving our health benefits.
Yeah. All right, Heaven, you were gonna do the evaluation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we put together very well. It was easy to identify the central idea, and I could tell you strategically put the slides in a way that you would kind of bring up the subject first, and then show a slide and continue on with what you were talking about. And then I could tell you, you use a lot of quoted material, and what I like that you did is that you didn't just say the quote and then move on to the next subject. You said the quote and then shared how you felt about that said quote, and it really gave like great input. The only thing I would probably advise is I do the same thing where you kind of rush through it at some points because I think you get nervous and you kind of start talking really fast, and you kind of lose sight of like the point there. But you always like caught yourself back up and slow down and pace yourself again. But you had a lot of information in it, and I didn't feel like I got lost. I think that you kept on very well, so I really enjoyed it.
You had that common reference at the beginning, kind of both a query or I don't know about you guys, but I like the example that you have of your own hobby that you start with, and I think maybe you could have talked about it a little bit more to pull our interest in, without making it seem like that was what your subject was going to be, talking about your particular hobby, but why having a hobby is beneficial and what you get out of it. I think that might have worked a little bit more if you could have pumped that up. But I like the general idea. I'm talking about what could you do to make things work better. So it's not a criticism in the sense that what you did was wrong. It's just how could you make it work a little bit better. And I think given more detail about your own hobby and then using that as a transition to having a hobby would, I think, work more effectively than going the other direction, which is kind of the way you go at it. The thesis is very clear. you set up a goal and you've got a justification. It's a basic preview, but it's easy to follow. And in the body of the speech, I could hear it for the most part. There was a spot when you were in the middle section where I think maybe I lost a little bit about where you were headed. But you did something well that a lot of people forget to do, is when you're summarizing, you're reminding us what those main points are. That kind of rescues a lot of speeches when they are a little bit less organized than they could have been, is when you remind us, well, here are the points that I was trying to make at the end, and say, oh yeah, that's where that fit. That makes it seem a lot more coherent than in the middle section. Like I said, it's not that you were lost per se. It just didn't seem quite as clear in the middle as it did at the beginning at the end. I still thought it was fine. The supporting material, I heard consistent reference to information, source citations. There were a couple of times when you gave us a name, for instance, that I didn't know who that person was. I wrote down one name, Elizabeth Scott. I'm going, well, who's Elizabeth Scott and why should I be listening to her? And then the very next person that you're quoting is somebody who's anonymous, and you quote them a couple of times. I'm going, so some person who isn't even willing to tell me what their name is now giving me advice. I'm going, that's a little bit iffy. But then after that, you were a little bit more consistent about citing organizations or institutions or people who were affiliated with an organization or institution, and I could see why that would be more useful information. So you're doing a good job there. Like I said, there's one or two things that were a little bit odd. And I don't mind you're quoting the anonymous person in that situation. I just want to make sure that there was other stuff that was going to come in and support that, and it wasn't just some random troll on an internet site posting a comment, and you're going to use that as your support for the material. I think that every time you start talking about the personal examples, it's more interesting. All right, when you talk about it in a generic sense, it's fine, but when you can personalize it, it makes us want to listen more to you and be more engaged. So when you're talking about your experience, for instance, with the Polynesian Club when you were in high school, you say, well, I got into that with a bunch of other people, and then they all left me by myself. And I'm going, I know what those kinds of experiences could be like, but what did you get out of it? That's when I'm willing to pay attention to what's going on. And when you're mentioning the stress relief, the social benefits, and what the potential health benefits are, I think that's one of those things that you should be talking about. For example, with your face charting, what do you call it?
Face charting.
Face charting. With your face charting, you say, talk about stress relief. I've never been, particularly or had an easy time doing X, Y, and Z. But when I do the face charting, I concentrate. I'm less distracted by other things. I find myself motivated to do this kind of stuff. You don't want to make it all about yourself, but since you're talking about how it's a stress relief thing, I'm going, well, how does that help you? The one hobby that you have. Or being in the Polynesian Club, which I think is a good illustration for that second point. Well, did you make some friends that you didn't have before you joined the Polynesian Club? Are they still your friends? Do you socialize with them? That kind of thing. What kinds of experiences did you share with them? Some examples of that sort of thing would be helpful. Like, you still see these people, you take trips together, you socialize with them. I don't know, whatever kind of thing would go on there. I'm, of course, always thinking of my own experience. This is the listening thing that we talked about, where people start comparing their own experiences. So I'm thinking about my hobby and people that I interact with, and how has that enhanced my life. And I'd say, I could use this example. Here are people that I would never have met otherwise, except that I have this particular interest, and it's given me a chance to know them better, to see the world from different perspectives, that kind of thing. So using your personal experience, I think, kind of reinforces the other things that you're talking about, and I think you could do a little bit more of that, and it would be great. Although what you did was very solid too. The only thing that I think is mildly problematic in the speech is that the visuals are just kind of like they're there. It's like, I know I have to have a visual to illustrate something, and I don't know that they illustrate all that much. I'm seeing kids running, and then I'm seeing people on the treadmill. Okay, I can get a little bit of a relationship on that one. After that, there are a whole bunch of pictures of people in groups. I'm going, well, wait a second, what's going on here? You got to get in a group to be able to do this sort of activity, which is fine. that supports your point about socializing, and I think that there's got to be some way that you can connect with that. There's research material that talks about how people develop relationships based on group memberships. That would be something that could be documented, and maybe there's some quantitative information that goes along with it. You know, the pictures of happy, smiling people they don't add that much to the presentation. Like you mentioned in one section when you're talking about gardening, all the potential benefits that you get from it. I'm thinking this would be one of those things where you could have a little, table chart with some check marks on it and said, look at, you get to do this and this and this and this as a result of gardening. And it would just be a little bit more applicable to the subject that you're talking about as opposed to something that's generic. You ever watch the news and you see generic news clips that they just put in the background while they're talking about something? I swear I see the same fat person every time they talk about a health issue on one of these stations. They've got this stock footage that they use as they show people walking down the street, and they always show them from the neck down because they don't want to show their faces, and they show their body types. And it's like every time there's a story about heart attacks or obesity or some illness that's going on, it seems like they show the same clip. It feels a little bit generic like that. In other words, I'm going, isn't there something that's more original and more applicable to what you're talking about that could make it more interesting? That's what I think you needed there. It wasn't bad. It's just, what could we add? Let's add some value to your presentation. And like I said, I thought the summary was pretty good. Delivery-wise, it's mostly solid. Sometimes you have to depend on the notes, but I appreciated the fact that you're usually facing this direction. And even when you look down at your notes, you don't stop facing us. Your body is oriented toward us, and I think that's a good thing. Hear that, everybody else?